Hello friends, followers and channel members, welcome to another video here in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and today I'm going to be doing a tutorial which a lot of people have asked me about, and that is, can I do a quick tutorial on reading charts, more specifically reading the charts for SIDs, the standard instrument departures, and the stars, the standard arrival routes. So we're currently sat on the ground at Berlin, Brandenburg, runway 25 right, and we're going to have a look at reading the SID chart for a departure out of here. So let's get on board and get going. So here we are on the flight deck then, and today we're going to be doing the Lurus 1 Alpha departure from runway 25 right, and this is the chart that we have showing three different versions: the Lurus 1 Alpha, the 1 Charlie and the 1 Mike. The first thing that the pilots would do is make sure they're both reading the chart, and they check the number of the chart to make sure they're both reading the same chart. They can also check the effectiveness date as well to make sure that it is still valid. Very, very important in the pre-digital days when pilots had stacks and stacks of paper charts. They had to make sure they were reading valid charts and reading off the same ones. Now it's a little bit less of a concern as pilots have everything on tablets or flypads, and so it's all done digitally. But let's take a look at what this particular chart shows us. So as I said, there are three different routings to Lurus depicted on this chart, and it's called Lurus because that is the exit point. That is the last waypoint on the standard instrument departure, and you'll find that for most departures that they are named after the exit point of the departure route. So starting at the top left, a lot of this is actually quite self-explanatory. So the three different departures: Lurus 1A is for jet aircraft only, Lurus 1 Charlie is only for prop or turboprops, and Lurus 1 Mike is also for jet aircraft only. Of course, which one you pick depends upon air traffic control. They can give you whichever one they want. If you're picking yourself, it really doesn't matter, as long as, of course, for this particular example, we wouldn't want to be doing the Lurus 1 Charlie flying an Airbus A320. So once you've gone in and selected the departure that you're going to do on the McDo, then we're going to have a look at the chart and make sure that everything matches up. The first thing I want to be aware of is the initial climb clearance. So for Lurus 1 Alpha, the initial climb clearance is 5,000 feet. So we'd want to make sure that this was set on here, and that's now confirmed 5,000 blue. So we know that the aircraft, once we turn on the autopilot, is going to continue the climb up to 5,000 feet. What else do we need to know about this departure? We need to know the transition altitude, which also happens on this occasion to be 5,000 feet, and then there's information which might not be prevalent to us here in the simulator, but things like simultaneous parallel departures in progress. Pilots have to proceed exactly on the extended center line until starting the turns as published in the departure routes, and this is basically just information for the pilots. You've also got the airport elevation as shown here. It also tells us that we would have to contact Bremen radar when advised by the tower. So we on some departures this may say that straight after departure you need to contact whichever radar service, but on this occasion you'd have to wait until air traffic control, the control tower, had told you to go ahead and contact them. So let's come down and have a little look at the actual route. So this is where, if we're not careful, it can get a little bit confusing. So the Lurus 1 Alpha is this departure line just here. You can see that the other one is this is Lurus 1 Mike, takes us out this way. Now, how do I know this is Lurus 1 Mike? Well, that is because we can see Lurus 1 Alpha there, Lurus 1 Mike here, Lurus 1 Alpha here, Lurus 1 Charlie there. We can see Lurus 1 Charlie goes off in this direction, 1 Alpha goes off in this direction, and we knew that the other one was 1 Mike, so that must be here. We can also see it says Lurus 1 Mike just there as well, but it's the 1 Alpha that we've got coded in. Now, it actually gives you a very detailed information on the routing as well. So climb straight ahead to 5.1 DME from Sierra Delta Delta, then a right turn 261 to track to distance 10.8 Sierra Delta Delta, and lots of information regarding what we would do. Now, in terms of this, the Airbus is obviously a sophisticated aircraft, so all of this information, all of this track, it's already coded in to your departure and your flight management computer, so you don't have to track VORs and NDBs, etc., like you did perhaps in the olden days when GPS wasn't around. What we do need to do, however, is check that the coding in the FMGC matches the coding that we've got here on the chart. And what do I mean by coding? Basically, I mean that all the different points and waypoints match up on the FMGC. So let's go ahead and have a look at that. So here we can see both the chart and the flight plan in the FMGC next to each other, and we can cross-reference all the waypoints against each other. So after we take off from 25 right, we continue out, and then we get one of these USR points. Now, I've spoke about these before, these user points. They wouldn't actually be depicted in the flight plan page of the McDo as a USR point. They would actually show a usually a level, so 600 feet. It's not actually shown here on the chart, and this is just the first of a couple of discrepancies in this example, which I'm basically leaving in the video just to show you that you do get discrepancies, and that's purely a simulator thing. If you are using Navigraph data, then the chances are that you're going to get much more accurate information. I'm not using Navigraph data in Microsoft Flight Simulator at the moment. I'm just using NavBlue data, which is the default for Microsoft Flight Simulator. However, if we have a look at these, we've got a couple of waypoints after this. So we've got Berlin 240, 241 and 242, and you can see that these are these little markers here, which is where the direction of the aircraft will change ever so slightly, and this is all hard coded in by GPS. So if your autopilot is on, the autopilot is going to fly these for you. If the autopilot isn't on, then you just follow the flight directors and you'll be able to follow this quite nicely. The first waypoint is Delta Bravo 243, which if we scroll down we'll see just here, and then what we need to do is check that the next waypoint for our departure is shown. So the next waypoint is Gerga, which is shown just here. After that we've got Pinob and Jakau. There's Pinob and Jakau. We've then got Delta Bravo 249, and finally we have Luros. So there's our exit on the standard instrument departure at Luros. Other pieces of information then that we can get from the chart: we have got a speed constraint in the first turn, a maximum speed of 230 knots, which obviously we need to make sure we don't accelerate over that speed throughout that turn. That's just to make sure that we don't accelerate and come out a little bit too far in the turn over here. Once you've made that turn, then we can start to accelerate the aircraft away. Other pieces of information then: you'll see that there's an altitude 5,000 feet, 5,000 feet, 5,000 feet. That is because the altitudes shown here are the minimums altitudes that you can go to after passing these waypoints. So after Gerga, no more than 5,000. PMOP, no more than 5,000, etc., etc. And that matches up pretty much with the initial climb clearance of 5,000 feet. However, what would most likely happen with air traffic control is once you are safely on your way, air traffic control will tell you that you're now clear to climb to a much higher altitude. It would be very, very rare if you did this entire procedure and maintained an altitude of 5,000 feet. It just wouldn't happen. And the air traffic controllers want to get you out of the way nice and well, as quickly as they can. One, it's great for the aircraft and the airline as it saves fuel as you get higher up, and of course you have to remember that you also have aircraft coming in to land at Berlin as well, so they don't want you trundling away at 5,000 feet. They want to get you up and out of the way as soon as possible. The chart also shows a minimum climb gradient of 490 feet per nautical mile, or 8%. Now this is something which real-world pilots can make sure that they can meet using their airline software that they provide them with on their company tablet or flypad. But you also have a good reference here with a ground speed and 490 per nautical miles on the bottom, basically showing what your V speed needs to be. Now as we're climbing away, the normal sort of speed that we're going to be doing in an Airbus A320 is anywhere between 150 and 250 knots, and the aircraft is more than capable at climbing at over 2,000 feet per minute. So we're quite happy that we can meet the climb gradient for this. It would be very, very rare that the Airbus A320 cannot meet any sort of minimum climb gradient. The final thing then that the chart shows you is it does show you the various VORs and beacons on the airport itself. You've also got these which you can then pop into your RadNav page, so I can pop this one in, Bravo, Bravo, India, and these are just good for situational awareness. I always like to do this when I'm flying, and you can confirm which one by cross-referencing the frequency 114.1. I always like to put these in just because if we did have an issue with the aircraft on departure, then I know I can just flip the VOR on and I know how far I am away. I know what direction the airport is, of course, if we're flying in bad weather so we can't actually see out the window. So yeah, it's just very, very handy to have that. Another thing that the chart shows us is it will also show you the highest point of the terrain around the airport on this particular chart for the departure, and that's always indicated by a large white arrow. So as you can see, it's just showing you that there's a building, tower, mast, whatever it may be at 1,329 feet, just so you're aware of the highest point. The other thing then is the minimum safe altitude, which is shown. Now in this case it is 2,400 feet, so if you did have a problem, say we had a problem with the engines, or we lost an engine on departure, we'd have to get up to a minimum of 2,400 feet before we knew we were safe to clear any terrain, and this is a 25-mile radius around the BBI VOR as shown just here. And you can see we've got other numbers in grey. These are the grid minimum off-route altitudes, so you can see they obviously match up, 2,400 feet, 2,400 feet, but if we come out over here, once we're out here, the minimum is 2,100 feet. So that's what these little numbers on there mean as well. 2,200 feet showing over here, of course. Now we know how to read the SID chart, we can take off, follow the SID, we're quite happily briefed. Next we're going to have a look at our arrival chart. So here we are then, nicely on our way towards Vienna, and we are going to be landing on runway 29 today, and your STAR or standard arrival route will usually be given to you on your operational flight plan, and if not, then air traffic control will give you the standard arrival route that you're going to be using. Our standard arrival route today is this one, the Mikov 7 Whiskey, which gets its name from the waypoint that begins the start of the approach at Mikov. So let's have a look at the information that we've got here on this chart. Now the arrival into Vienna I've picked intentionally. It's actually a little bit more complicated than the norm. You've got a STAR and then you've also got a transition. So the STAR is where you get peeled off of the airways, off your route, and start your arrival towards the airport, and then the transition normally goes from which particular waypoint you're then going to transition from onto the final approach path. Not all airports have this. Transitions are only common usually in bigger and larger airports where they have lots of traffic. Normally you just have a STAR which takes you straight from the first waypoint of the STAR all the way down towards your landing, or at least to the point where you would then vector yourself in, or air traffic control would vector yourself in for your final approach. Let's have a little look then at reading the chart. So again, information regarding the number of the chart and when it was effective from, all shown. Also gives you the airport elevation as well, and then just gives you notes at the top. So we're using the Mykov 7 Whiskey, as I say, for ours, and our first waypoint just here at Wykov, we're being told that we need to be between an altitude of 6,000 feet or a flight level of 170. Of course, that is quite a large range that you've got to play with there, so no problems with that. Basically, that's what the two numbers mean at this point. We then go from Mykov to the next waypoint, which is Mabod. Now, Mabod has a holding point associated with it, and we can see a direction of hold just here. If air traffic control told us to hold at Mabod, after we overflew it, we'd then fly on to a heading of 344, and we set the timer going for 1 minute in this direction, and after a minute, we'd then turn back around to come back towards Mabod. And we just continue to do this, but the Airbus A320 in the real world will have the hold function built in for you. It's not yet available at the time of making this video. Hopefully that'll be coming to the fly-by-wire A320 very soon, so I'll do a tutorial on that when it becomes available. You're also then given a couple of other pieces of information on this first little direction between Mykov and Mabod. So you're given the distance between the two waypoints, which is 12.9 miles, and you're also given the lowest altitude you're allowed to descend to after Mykov. So after Mykov, you're not allowed to descend any lower than 6,000 feet. So essentially, we're still going to be at 6,000 feet by the time we get to Mabod. After then, this is the point where we need to move on to the next chart, because this is just the initial RNAV star chart, and you'll see that Mabod is the final point for all of these. You can see that there are arrivals via Reklu, Mykov and Tovka just here. Well, we're coming from the north, which is why we're using the Mykov arrival today. Once we get to Mabod, then we need to move on to the next chart. So here the arrival picks up at Mabod, and as you can see, we want to be at 6,000 feet or above. Then we continue all the way down, still with the same information being shown. So we've got the distance here, and we're just confirming that this is now the Mabod 5 Mike transition. So Mabod down to Whiskey Whiskey 967, 965, 961, etc, etc, and all of these we need to be above 6,000 feet. Now, you wouldn't want to be at 6,000 feet by the time you got to Mabod, because otherwise you're going to be traveling at 6,000 feet for a long time, and you can do some mental arithmetic to work out how many track miles you've got to go. So 8, 16, 24, 34, call that 40, 50, so 50, 55, 60, 65. You've still got about 70 track miles to go from Mabod. You don't want to be at 6,000 feet by this point. Okay, the next thing you're going to want to do then is, of course, make sure that all of this coding matches up with what we have on the McDo. So from Mabod, we want to see 67, 65, 61, 59, 57, 55, and if we quickly just jump down and have a look at that, we'll see that from Mabod they all match up quite nicely. So all of the coding is correct. Other things then we can get from this particular chart is, again, we've got the minimum safe altitude, so 3,600 feet in the northern sector, and you can see for this one it's actually divided up a little bit like a pie chart as you look at it. So based on the center of this, from Whiskey Whiskey 951, a 25-mile diameter, you've got 3,600 feet to the north. In this sector just here, 4,000 feet, and then in this sector again 2,400 feet down here. So now we've got the routing shown. Other information that it can give you is it gives you a little bit of descent planning. So we're told we can expect a base turn, normally a beam, a 10 to 15 mile final, and it also has information for lost comms, not really applicable to the flight simulator world, but it makes for some useful reading. We've also got the grid minimum off-route altitude, so you can see here in grey 4,200 feet, 4,600 feet over here, 5,000 feet as we're getting a bit lower down towards the Alps, 10,000 feet just there, so always worth paying particular attention to those as well. Remember, they are minimum off-route altitude, so as long as you are on this particular route, then you are going to be safe. These are designed to be safe down to 6,000 feet, down to 3,000 feet, so don't worry that we're at 3,000 feet here, but in this little sector it's 4,000 feet. These are all designed with terrain in mind. That's why these are called minimum off-route altitudes. So next we're going to have a look at the final chart, which is the ILS approach chart. So an ILS approach then, and it begins at Oscar Echo X-ray, a distance of 7.4 miles. Now again, sometimes these aren't shown in the McDo, and it's not shown just there. However, FI29 is, which will reference to these waypoints just here, and I'll just show you that there. FI29 is there, so we want to be at 3,000 feet as we begin the approach. But let's have a look at some information that we can get off this particular chart. To help with our distance from the airport then, and for situational awareness, and of course for the missed approach, we could put the Fox Mike Delta VOR into our RadNav page and turn that on, so then we've got a bearing, we've got a distance, and if we had to do a missed approach, then we can track that quite nicely. As we come down a little bit further, we've already said we've got the ILS frequency here. The fact that it is an ILS DME and not just an ILS tells us that once we turn on the landing system, the LS push button, then you would get a distance readout from it as well. Not all ILS approaches give us that, but this one, as it's an ILS DME, it has the distance measuring equipment, so we're able to get that. There's the big white arrow again, showing us our highest point of terrain with regards to our approach. So as we're coming in down here, out to the left, we'd be able to see that as we're coming down. If we move further down then, for some reason, if the glide slope appeared to be in op, which happens occasionally as airports shut things down to get them repaired or do maintenance on them, then you would cross-reference the distance from the ILS frequency and the ILS information that you would get on the bottom left as your primary flight display. You would cross-reference the distance in miles against your altitude. So you would know, looking at that, whether you were too high or too low. This is useful as well. You'll see things like this on an RNAV approach, where you can have a look at these to see if you're on the correct descent profile. Next, we have information regarding the ILS glide slope angle. So it's a normal 3-degree approach, and again, that's useful to know if for some reason the glide slope was out and we did have to reference these. We'd be using a nav FPA approach and we would set a 3-degree descent angle. Here we've got more information regarding the runway, telling us that we've got PAPIs, and we've also then got information regarding the missed approach, so straight ahead for 10 miles and then a right hand turn 5,000 feet and then direct to Fox Mike Delta. So that's all the information for the missed approach, but given to us in almost it's almost sign language, isn't it? So we can look at that and we've got a quick reference without having to read. We know exactly what it is we need to do. Next we come down to the last line, and this is our minimums for the approach. So these need to be met before we can legally start the approach. So if for some reason the glide slope was out, our decision altitude, minimum descent altitude, is 1,200 feet. If we're doing the normal Cat 1, so the localizer, the ILS, everything is working, then the runway visual range has to be a minimum of 550 meters. I should have also pointed out that if the glide slope is out, then the minimum runway visual range is 2,000 meters or 2 kilometers. So runway visual range 550 meters, and then our decision altitude is 800 feet. If it's Cat 2, so the runway visual range is only 300 meters, that's when we can do the Cat 2, and then we have a radar altitude of 97 feet. If it's even worse weather-wise and we're getting down to a runway visual range of 200 meters or even 75, then we've got a decision height of 50 feet, and for Cat 3B, no decision height. Notice there are two different altitudes shown here. We've got 97 feet or 105 feet. Well, that relates to the category of aircraft. The A320 is a Cat C. Larger aircraft would be Cat D. So you can see that they're just a few feet higher. And sometimes that's usually because the pilot, if you think about the flight deck of a 747 compared to a Airbus A320, the flight deck of a 747 is actually much higher up. So there's probably not too much distance in there, but it's just to accommodate the height difference in terms of the two aircraft. So the information on this chart may vary a little bit because obviously it's not ILS, this uses GPS information. So a lot of it will be the same, but if we are doing this approach, then if we just have a look, the things that I would be looking for, again, you've got the minimums all shown down here. Now you'll see that these are usually a lot higher than they are for an ILS. ILS is much more accurate than these kinds of approaches. For the moment, of course, in the future, using GPS, these will most likely become the norm. But things that you're going to be looking for: the glide path angle 3 degrees, and that starts at the waypoint Whiskey Whiskey 950. So if you were doing an on-air approach, then we would be looking to pull that 3 degree descent angle about 0.3 miles from Whiskey Whiskey 950. We do it 0.3 miles before this point, just to give the aircraft time to start descending down. As it was descending then, distance to runway 29, we'd be checking that these distances match up with our altitude, and obviously if we're too low or we're too high, then we'd have to correct that appropriately. So yes, some slight differences, but overall the general reading of the chart is exactly the same. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you have found that useful. If you do have any questions, please ask down below and I'll come back and answer those for you. If you found the video useful, please remember to give the video a like and maybe subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notifications bell so you don't miss any future live streams or new video content that's going to be uploaded in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye bye for now.